Hello, everyone. This is Eric Pennington with the Spirit of EQ. Welcome to the Spirit of EQ podcast. Today's episode is on EQ, exercise, and nutrition.
Life is a journey. Spirit of EQ helps shape and guide the road ahead for individuals, leaders, teams, and organizations striving to realize their full potential through emotional intelligence. Spirit of EQ is a coaching and consulting company that assists individuals and businesses to reach their full potential by developing emotional intelligence. In business, managers and leaders recognize the value of training to develop leadership skills. What they may not realize is that those skills are far more effective when they pay attention to not only performance, but also to people. Emotional intelligence is a crucial skill because people drive performance and emotions drive people.
Joining me as always is Jeff East with the Spirit of EQ. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Hi, Eric. Everyone out there.
So, Jeff, I tried to pull this out of my hat like a magician.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about exercise and nutrition.
Okay.
And my gut is that there's probably a ton of people out there going, okay, so what does that have to do with emotional intelligence?
Well, we'll find out.
Yes, exactly. That's the beauty of this show. Just stick around, listen, and you'll find out. But let me start with something, and it's really been on my mind a lot, especially as we're in the first, we almost have completed 3 months of the year. And a number of people, typically they set their New Year's resolutions, and typically exercise and diet and losing weight and all that is on the list. I think there's a statistic somewhere, Jeff, that says that by the second week of February is kind of the window when things just kind of fall off, right?
Right.
So I'm thinking very positively about our audience. And I think that they are, even if they've fallen off, they still want to get it done. They still want to do it right. So I thought today in this episode, we could talk a little bit about the importance of exercise and nutrition, and also talk about the role that emotional intelligence plays with it. Now, here's the thing, warning for all the listeners out there. This is a no judgment zone. We're not going to go down the path of what you should do, what you shouldn't do, how much of X and how much of Y. I would tell you, if you're in a position where you're not sure, you're starting out, or you're wondering if you're on the right track, you probably want to hire someone, a trainer, a nutrition coach, a nutritionist. Might want to talk with your doctor. I just want to get that out straight, because this really is more about the decision-making side, Jeff, than it is about what's the right program.
If I could add something real quick to
absolutely.
That. Whenever Spirit of EQ, Eric and I, or any of the other people that we work with, are working with a person or a client, we're not there to solve their problem.
Yeah.
What we do is we provide the tools to make the decisions to solve the problem. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's a great way of putting it, Jeff, because ultimately the answer about what is the right program, right process for you is inside of you. And what works for me may not necessarily be a fit for you. Now, today, as we have this conversation, I'm going to touch on some of the things that I do, but not for the purposes of telling you that this is the way. It's done in purposes of illustrating, again, the connection to emotional intelligence. So, Jeff, I'm going to start there with the idea about the impacts of exercise and nutrition. And many of us, many of our audience members, you included, right, Jeff, you know that ultimately when we exercise and when we eat well, it can have a positive effect on our focus and our outlook. And I won't even go scientific on that. Just imagine that you were at dinner and you ate a meal that you like, but you ate too much and you don't feel so good about an hour later. Okay. How effective are you going to be with your focus? How effective are you going to be with your outlook when it's weighing you down, right?
You just want to go take a nap.
And there's a reason for that, right?
Hmm.
I mean, there is some science behind that. There's a reason why they recommend that you don't eat a big meal at lunchtime, right?
I don't think people realize how much energy your stomach, your digestive system is robbing from the rest of your body to do its work. And there's a lot of energy that's expended in digesting a big meal.
Exactly. So that's one area to think about. And I would also throw that out to you guys. And I think it's probably pretty evident. This connects directly with emotional intelligence and our decision making. Mm-hmm. Right. I'm going to kind of go to, which I think is one of the most powerful competencies in our work, Jeff, and that is applying consequential thinking. I'm not trying to be a killjoy here. I mean, if you love that pasta primavera, I get it. All I'm saying, though, is thinking it through, weighing the consequence of if I eat too much of something I like, it might have a negative impact on me a little further after, right? So has that ever happened to you? Has it ever happened to me, Jeff? Yes, absolutely. When I was enjoying myself and it was just great, and not to mention when we were eating more regularly with other people, the conversation, everybody's having fun, and before you know it, you're going, oh my gosh, this is my third slice of, or this is my third helping of, right? So again, this is not judgment, but it is something to kind of encourage the idea of using the competencies of emotional intelligence to help you make those better decisions. Because when you think about the United States of America, Jeff, it's very clear that we do have an issue with our physical well-being. It just is. And again, that's not to judge anyone. That's just to illustrate that that's a fact. So somewhere along the line, we've probably gotten out of the practice of using our emotional intelligence to make those better decisions. And that's kind of where we're going with this today, is how can I make the best decisions as I go down my path, right? One of the things that I would think when it comes to exercise and nutrition, matter of fact, I'll rephrase that and say, Jeff, the one things that have served me well is the recognition of the gift of life. I don't have to tell you or tell our audience just how marvelously the human body is made. I mean, Jeff, you and I have had side conversations about, about how it blows our mind how we operate just every single day, right?
It's the best minds in the world still can't figure out exactly how our minds work.
Yeah, right. And all of that is being forged together for our benefit, for our good, right? And I get it. And I'm in the club. I mean, parts of my body have stopped working and needed repair or can't get by without some kind of medication. But on the whole, Jeff, there's no getting around just how wonderfully we are made. So in that spirit, I think we want to be doing everything we can to take care of this wonderful gift that we've been given. And that's kind of sort of the overarching purpose around here, around this subject, is how do we get into the practice of making that a daily decision and choice. And for our listeners, one thing I would tell you is that this does not require that you train for a marathon. It does not require that you're able to deadlift 350 pounds, right? We're talking about, and a lot of we're going to be discussing here is about those small steps, those small things that you can start and you can build upon. And if you're able, and if you exercise your emotional intelligence and the competencies, you can get to a place where you'll get some momentum going around this. And Jeff, I'm really excited today to talk to you a bit about neural pathways, which is coming up, because that plays such a big part in this. So what I'm going to do, Jeff, is I'm going to pivot for a minute, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my routine and how I'm doing what I'm doing. Obviously, Jeff, I want your thoughts and your insights and questions as we go along here, but I want to kind of lay it out for the listeners that first, a little bit of my backstory. I was one of the worst offenders when it came to exercise and diet about 15 years or so ago. I was a corporate guy, as many of you know. Being a corporate exec, I thought that because I had a great title and I made a lot of money, that meant that everything else in life was good. If you're on that path, I highly, highly, highly recommend you get off. Take the exit ramp, because what I found out when I left corporate America was that I was not in such the best shape. And the funny story around that, a friend of mine had recommended that I take up running, because I had told him, I said, hey, I'm in this place. I'm kind of wondering if I need to get in better shape. I'm getting close to 40, blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, you should take up running. And before you do, make sure that you go to a place where you can buy really good shoes, because that's going to impact the quality of your run. It'll help you with injury and all of that. Okay, no problem. So I go to this place that specializes in running shoes. My friend had prepared me, you're going to pay more than you usually would expect to pay, because you're buying the right type of shoe. No problem. So I get in there, and I'm sure that the guy that was helping me out probably thought, boy, this guy doesn't know what he's getting into. Because, Jeff, I walked in thinking, this is not going to be a big deal. I'll probably be ready for a marathon in a couple months. So I'll never forget the look on his face when I was just uber confident and ready to go. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I remember him looking at me, Jeff, with like a wince on his face, kind of that look like when somebody knows somebody's about ready to punch them and they're trying to block the blow type thing. And he says to me, I got to tell you, the first 4 or 6 weeks, it's probably going to suck. He's got it, right? And here I am. I'm thinking, this is not going to be a big deal at all. And Jeff, I got home, got ready for the next morning, got up that morning, and I think I might have made it an eighth of a mile, maybe a quarter, before I thought I was going to have a coronary. And I'll never forget the street I was walking on, the sidewalk at that point, thinking, oh my goodness, I am out of shape. I could, if you would have said you'd pay me $10,000, I would not have been able to keep going. It was that bad. And that was the catalyst of humility, because I realized I wasn't as great as I thought I was, and to really get committed about this thing of exercise and nutrition. So I was the guy that thought I could do without it. It would just take care of itself. Fast forward, as I got into that routine, I started looking at what I was eating. I started looking at my exercise, and I adopted some things that worked for me. Again, I want to stress to everyone listening, what I did may not be what you should do. I highly, highly recommend that you do this in concert with your medical professional, a coach, trainer, whatever you may have, because we're all different and we're all made different. The things that I could do versus what you can do, on and on and on. So I set forward in a plan. It wasn't immediate, but fast forward to today, I'm in a routine of where I exercise Monday through Friday, and I do a blend of yoga, strength training, running, things of that nature. I typically try to do, 30 to 45 minutes, I think is what it kind of equals out to in the end. I take off Saturday and Sunday. This is kind of a new protocol for me, because I am looking into the benefits of rest for the body. And so far, it's proven to be a good pathway. From a nutrition perspective, I try to stay inside of that. I probably will pronounce it wrong, so please bear with me. Paleo type of diet with a little bit of autoimmune protocol, which is kind of designed to help with inflammation, because inflammation's a big deal. And there's a lot of reasons, a lot of research out around that. I also try to not be, again, for lack of a better way of saying it, a killjoy. I have the things that I like to eat that probably are not the greatest for me. But what I try to make sure of is that I don't make those a regular part of my diet. I don't really feel it's healthy to just go, I cannot eat that ever. I think it's much more healthy to have a balance about it and saying, I can, but I'm planning for it. I'm going to do that once per month. That's what's worked for me. I know there's some people, Jeff, that would say, oh, no, I can't have that in the house.
Before all the COVID stuff happened, I was doing very well with intermittent fasting.
Oh, yeah.
And then when everything hit, it just totally disrupted my schedule, which I'm now getting back into that because I'd lost the gains that I'd made, or gained the loss that I made, however you want to say it.
Yeah, right.
But the program that I'm using has built in a cheat day or something, so that
yes,
if your fasting period is going on now, you can. It's okay if somebody's having a birthday party.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, you need to have something like that built in, because if you don't, doing it will probably derail you.
That's an important note. And I would also add to that, Jeff, I don't want to sound somewhat of a downer here, but nobody gets out of this alive. So the idea that if I have a slice of cake at a birthday party could mean the difference between living 3 or 5 more years, I think is fantasy. I'd almost lay odds on it. It's fantasy. What we're talking about is intention and consistency around what we do, which kind of leads me to the role of emotional intelligence and my routine. Emotional intelligence has really helped me to be aware and to pay attention to my body, to how I feel, to what are the impacts of the food I'm eating? What are the impacts of the exercise? The idea about recognizing patterns in our world is we don't need to repeat here for very long, but it has helped me kind of get a sense about it. And as I said there at the beginning, Jeff, I've been given this wonderful gift, my body, my mind, life. I want to do everything I can, and recognizing, Jeff, that there may be some things I could do 100% right, and I'm still going to get the diagnosis. There are many people out there that are in the same boat. Maybe they've done everything, maybe the healthiest person, whatever, and they still get the diagnosis. But here's the thing. I've taken the approach of I'm going to be well regardless of my circumstances, regardless of whether or not I get the good news or the bad news, because all of us have that in common, Jeff. We all are getting good news and bad news. So my perspective with emotional intelligence, it's helped me continue to grow it. And I would say as a last thing around my routine is what I've been discovering a lot is about yoga. And its benefits from a physical perspective are well documented. One of the things that it has done for me, and again, stressing that for me, is that it's helped sharpen my understanding and that awareness about my body and what it's doing, right? Because absent of that, I think it is for me to get into a place where I go on autopilot. I start to eat and not think about it. I just do it. Great example this morning. I get a text message from someone who really wanted to communicate about a certain subject. And it was a fairly heavy subject, right? And don't you know, Jeff, my mind went totally on what was I going to say, how I was going to say it, What were my thoughts? They responded back to me. I responded back to them. They responded back to me. And Jeff, I'm eating my breakfast. But if you ask me, okay, so do you remember what was going on with what you were eating and what you were drinking? Jeff, I'd have to tell you, I was distracted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people could say, well, what difference does it make? Well, I think it makes a big difference, because that awareness in focus is something that you want to build into your practice, right?
Yeah, being in the moment.
Right. Because I'm just being fully transparent with you and the audience, right? Jeff, I probably ended up just stuffing myself with my food so I could get on to responding to the message, right? Now, does that mean end of the world? Does that mean I should resign from the Emotional Intelligence Club of America? No. But Jeff, you know what? The wiser thing, the more powerful thing would have been for me I'll respond after I'm finished eating. And in fairness to the person that sent me the text messages, they didn't say, Eric, I need a response in 20 seconds.
But our world tells us now that has to be done right this second.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a good segue, Jeff, I wanted to talk about, and I want your insights on neural pathways.
Okay.
For just the benefit of the audience, can you just give us a high level about neural pathways? And then as we get into discussion, I'm going to connect that into this idea about managing this practice for your physical and nutritional needs.
To me, I will, every time I talk about neural pathways, I will get chemicals and everything all messed up. So I'm not going to go down that road, because I am not a neuroscientist, right, and I'm not going to pretend to be, because I'll just make myself look silly. Basically, right. A neural pathway is something in your brain that is like a road, or for me, I think of it more of like a river. That when this is going on, that's the pathway that you're used to, and you automatically go to that pathway because it's easy. You're familiar with it. Your brain, your body, and everything is used to going down that pathway. But the issue with the neural pathway is, where is the destination of that pathway? Is it taking you where you want to be? So, okay.
I want to go to that example with me and the text message and my meal.
Okay.
Now, you and I agree, right? That's probably not end of the world stuff. One off, better next time around. But Jeff, what if I decided that every time I get a text message, I got to respond right now? And let's say that this, right? And let's just say it happens tomorrow. It happens next week, next month, next 2 months. What's happening then?
You're building a neural pathway. You're making that river easy to navigate. It's going to be nice and deep and wide with not a lot of current, and it's going to take you to that destination every time. And you don't even think about it.
Okay. And Jeff, if you were to ask me, right, Eric, is that where you want to go? My immediate answer would be no, Jeff. I need to eat my meal, and I can respond after, right?
Uh-huh. Right.
So I interrupted you, and I wanted to, because I want everybody to understand the building of a neural pathway begins with the first step into the boat.
It starts out as a little ditch, or a little. I'm an old farm boy. A little creek.
Right.
For the non-Midwesterns, that's creek.
Right. And that's where I'm going with this, because the subtlety of it can be really dangerous, right? And the beauty again of our work, Jeff, and the clients that we work with, we're helping them recognize these kind of patterns and using competencies like recognizing patterns to okay, careful. Now you watch what you're doing, because these neural pathways are very powerful. So you keep going.
So the more you use that neural pathway, the easier it is for you to navigate it, and it becomes automatic. When this situation comes up, I already have the roadmap of where I'm going to go. I'm going to go down that pathway. Where it like you said, where it becomes a danger is when that is not the destination you really want to go to. So now you're going to have to do some work to build a new neural pathway. Example I had in my previous career, I worked for a service company, and I came up through the ranks. And the first several years I was a field technician, which I loved doing, but then I started to move into management. But my neural pathway that I developed was, if there is a situation with the customer, I had to be the one to take care of it.
Mm.
But that was not my role anymore. My role was to get the technicians to take care of the customer and then provide support to them. And it took a while for me to rebuild that pathway so that when a situation came up, there was a problem, I would let them do what they needed to do and then do what I needed to do to support them. So I got pretty successful and was able to build that second pathway. But the problem is that first pathway doesn't go away.
Right. It just doesn't magically disappear.
So what I found myself in is, if I had a customer that was very irate, or maybe the technician was being unreasonable or giving me issues, I would go back to that pathway and I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how it took practice. Probably for the first year, it was very easy for me to slip into that first neural pathway. Then as I kept doing it, it got better. And then when I would have those situations where I would go back to it, I was able to recognize that pattern and go, no, I can't go down that pathway again.
Well, you just illustrated, Jeff, the power of emotional intelligence, and the idea here is that as we leverage and grow the competencies, they aid us in something that is very natural. I mean, it just is, and even when we look at it from the perspective of the exercise and nutrition thing. When you begin a program at the very beginning, it's going to feel like your brain's fighting you on it. Mm-hmm. And you're in the process of building a new neural pathway. And your brain is rejecting it because the beauty of why we have our brain, one of the big reasons, it's to protect us. It's to give us order and efficiency.
Well, if you, let's say you live in the mountains in Wyoming and where there's bears, the neural pathway that you build for when you're confronted by a bear, that one you should probably leave alone and not worry about it because that one's going to serve you well. And that's where you need to recognize the pattern and really pay attention to it.
Yep. Because there are some of them, like you said, Jeff, that should remain in place. They're there for good reason. Mm-hmm. And that's a great example. And I think one of the things that I have seen, and it's not just in the physical and exercise initiation, is that people can't handle the front end pain and resistance that they experience when they're trying to build this new neural pathway. Mm-hmm. So they give up. Right? As you said, if you live in Wyoming and you've got a neural pathway about how it is you handle hiking where there's bears nearby, mm-hmm. Again, that's serving you well. You probably don't want to develop a new one around that, right? But when it comes to whether you had a conversation with your doctor and the doctor says you've really got to change your diet, or the doctor says you've really got to start exercising, whatever it may be, I'm just wanting to say to everybody, and this is the beauty of using empathy. Go easy on yourself in that first 2 to 3 weeks, because it is going to be tough. It is going to, it's as like the running shoe guy told me so many years ago, it's going to suck probably for the first 4 to 6 weeks. But Jeff, I think there's something wonderful about if you know ahead of time that's going to be kind of sucky,
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you're forewarned is forearmed, if I get that saying
Right.
right.
Exactly.
Um, so I guess where I'm going in that respect is recognize that there will be the resistance, recognize that the first whatever window of time, the early part of your building of a new neural pathway is going to be tough. But I can tell you from my own experience, if you will hang in there, you will see something start to happen with your brain. I'm going to just throw it into my lingo here. Your brain will begin to do oh, okay, we could do this. I kind of like this new pathway. We get up every morning and we go for a walk. We get up every morning and we do yoga. Oh, yeah. And before you know it, it will start helping you. In the beginning, it was like resisting. Now it's in this mode of helping you, right? And it's a
Mm-hmm.
new neural pathway. And I can tell you from my own experience and others, when they try to go down the path of, well, I'm not going to exercise anymore, their brain starts to fight them on it. Why? Because of that neural pathway thing, right?
Exactly.
And hopefully, Jeff, this is coming out clear for everyone that, we've been given such autonomy over, I don't know how I'd want to say it, how to create a life that is the kind of life that is really good. I mean, I know we're not going to do anything about the circumstances. I can't, we don't have an answer for COVID-19 and lockdowns and masks and all that. But on the whole, right, the choices that we're making around our lifestyles, in this case, exercise and nutrition, are going to kind of be what we kind of choose them to be, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. We have control over the things we have control of. There are some things, like you said, we can't control, but do some, the things that you can actually change the outcome or affect the outcome is what we need to pay attention to. I can't change, like you said, I can't change COVID, but I can change how I am being affected by COVID.
Yeah, your response to it, right? I mean, and how the choices. I mean, this is I came into this episode, Jeff, really wanting to emphasize the need for people to feel that they could listen to this and not feel shame or embarrassment or anything like that. And I do want that. I also want to be straight with people that we're not talking about different types of cars and vehicles. You may like electric. I may want the regular gas. You may like an SUV. I want a compact. We're talking about something that's very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's important, every single person should be paying attention to it with urgency and with dedication. Now, I want to talk a little bit, Jeff, about small steps versus big steps, right? So when we think about it, we want to be successful at this. If we're going to make some changes with our exercise or our diet, if it's a radical change or if it's just an incremental or a small change or what have you, one of the key ways that I've found has been taking small steps or setting small goals. Because when we recognize that in the beginning, once again, your brain's going to resist. So it's much better for it to resist in a small thing than a big thing. Mm-hmm. Because you think about the chances, right? If I'm trying to tackle this giant thing, big thing, I'm probably increasing the chances that I'm just going to surrender. A small thing is probably going to be one that I'll be able to overcome. But along the way, I'm building up this sort of these small steps leading to a big thing, right? So for those of you out in the audience that maybe are thinking about a plan, I'm going to highly recommend that if it comes to exercise, and if you've not exercised since COVID began, let's say you haven't exercised in a year meaningfully, maybe the idea is don't jump into a gym membership and start lifting weights. Maybe it should start with, I'm going to start walking every other day for 20 minutes. And my goal is going to be is that after a month of doing that, I'm going to go back to the gym and I'm going to start using their elliptical. And then the month after that, I'm going to graduate myself up to doing strength training. And I'm going to use weights that are maybe 50% lower than what I was used to 2 years ago. And yes, if you're a person of a lot of ego, you might think, it's no big deal. But what we're trying to do here is not so much make you a specimen for the world to see. We're trying to build up something that becomes your lifelong practice.
I was just thinking this time of year, I'm a big baseball fan. And normal years, spring training for baseball lasts over a month.
Yeah.
I mean, these are professional athletes, and they don't come in on that first day of spring training doing what they did at the end of the season last year. The pitchers aren't all throwing 100 miles an hour when they first come in or throwing complete games. They're building back up to it, and these are professional athletes, and most of us aren't.
Yeah, but that's a great example, Jeff. And once again, I'm going to assume that the majority of our audience are not preparing for the Olympics. They're not, going to be going to the NFL Combine, all those different things, right? So I'm going to say that you can afford to take those small steps. One of the things I want to revisit a little bit that I mentioned in the beginning, Jeff, is a story about focus and outlook. There was a client many years ago, and this predates my time with you. And he's not the first I've experienced this with, where the subject of getting into a new routine from a health perspective. He came to me in this particular time and had said, I've fallen off. I haven't done what I need to be doing. And it's just so tough and it's hard. And he was speaking about exercise and diet. And, I said, look, go easy on yourself here. Using that same analogy, you're not going to the NFL Combine next week. So let's not crash the world because you had a bad 2 weeks or something. And this wasn't the first time. Wasn't the first time that he had that, oh my gosh, I've not stayed consistent. So there had to be some accountability. And in that accountability, I said to him, I'm going to make a list, and I want you to tell me, what are the benefits that you get from when you eat well and you exercise? He just started rattling off, Jeff. Oh, I've got better focus. I find that I got more energy. I find that I'm in a better mood. He just kept going on and on and on. And I said, would you mind if maybe, when we meet, I could ask you how important these 8 things that you just listed are to you? Because what I think happens is, Jeff, we become unconscious, kind of like me in that meal, right? Being interrupted by the text or focusing on a text message. We just get into this, oh yeah, I just ate. Oh yeah, I exercised. Oh yeah, I did it. Check mark, check mark, check mark, right? But the reality is that there's something really big and beneficial happening. So I would ask somewhat directly to the audience, to you, Jeff, to me, think about the benefits that you gain from exercise and nutrition and ask yourself, are those important to you? My gut is the answer is going to be yes. So why not do them? Now, remember, we got to factor in those neural pathways, the old ones. We have to factor in the process of building a new neural pathway, the resistance from our brains, right? All that stuff. We need to definitely factor in self-empathy. Notice how my voice got a little louder, Jeff. Self-empathy, right?
Yes.
Okay. The only people that should feel bad about themselves are the ones that won't even try it, that won't even work on it. If that's maybe a legitimate reason to feel bad about what you're doing. But if you're trying, if you're giving it your shot, you're starting off small, you're fighting the resistance. Don't beat yourself up. Don't criticize. Don't critique and judge. Just keep going. Just keep going.
And I think there needs to be a little, you need to have some reality built in. I know no matter how much work I would put in, I'm not going to be able to run a marathon because I've got a ankle that's put back together with some screws from a world's stupidest motorcycle accident.
Right.
So I have to take that into consideration, because if I tried to do that physically, mechanically, realistically, I know it can't happen. But, I'm working up to it again. I can go for an hour walk if I get myself back in shape. I also know there's going to be some pain in the ankle. So which is more important, that little bit of pain in the ankle or the hour walk? And that's the pathway I'm working on building right now.
And you know what, Jeff? I would take that in a heartbeat over any great achievement in a marathon or some other, because ultimately, Jeff, it's not just about the physical thing. It is about this idea of embracing this gift we've been given and treating it like that, right? And here's the thing. We live in an age of comparison. We live in an age of, I call it sort of, I think Facebook sometimes should have been renamed to Fake Book, because the reality of those pressures on people puts them in a position where they easily can begin to think, again, I'm not that good. I should do better. I should have done this. I'm not good enough at that. But here's the thing. When you can get to your place of running your own race, no pun intended, but you can run the race you've been given, the satisfaction level and the consistency and the, I don't know, for lack of a better way of saying it, Jeff, it's like, if you want to find something that'll help it stick, it's running your own race. Mm-hmm. And Jeff, an example for me, like right now, I'm transitioning a bit in my yoga practice, to doing it for longer and doing it more often. And you want to know something? My brain's resisting right now. You know why? Because my brain says, well, no, we only do yoga every other day. So you've got to stick to the program, Eric. That's what my brain is telling me. So don't you know that when I've started to go, I'm going to do more yoga, my brain's going, well, that's not what we do. So I'm getting resistance right now. But here's the thing. If I can tune Jeff out and I can tune out the world and social media that keeps telling me what I should be and what I should do, I'm going to be better positioned to move to that place that I need to with my yoga practice, right? Because there's so much of the best of our lives that are found in just moving down that path, being able to turn down all that noise and be able to, get in there and recognize that it's your race. It's not Eric and Jeff's race. It's your race. It's your routine. It's your diet. You make it the best you can. Mm-hmm. And that's just so vitally important. I'm going to touch on, as we get close to the end here, Jeff, on something I think is important, and that is accountability. And I think this can be a real aid for everyone. Let me stress to you what accountability is not, in my mind. Jeff, you can get your thoughts on this too. I'm not talking about accountability as in Jeff says, Eric, I want you to hold me accountable to taking a walk for an hour. And I'm going to do it every other day. And I text Jeff 3 times a day before the day he's going to go for the walk saying, are you ready? Did you buy your shoes? Are you taking your wife with you? Are you going to take the dog? And then Jeff gets back from the walk. And sure enough, I asked him when he was going, and I respond, okay, Jeff, did you finish? Did you walk for exactly an hour? I'm not talking about a nag.
No, exactly.
Right? All right. So I'm going to let you inject here, Jeff. What do you think I am talking about?
What accountability for somebody to help someone stick to what their goal is. One, I think there needs to be a little bit of depth in that, where I would share with you the reasons that I want to do this.
Yeah.
These are the benefits I'm looking for. This is why I'm doing it, so that you understand why. And then also, a good accountability coach, whatever you want to call it, has to have some empathy for that person to understand they're not always going to do what they said they're going to do, but because you know why I want to do it, you'll be able to use that knowledge to gently remind me, remind me of of why I'm setting that goal. And, like I said, I have a ankle messed up, and understand that, hey, was your ankle bothering you yesterday and you had to cut it short? Ask those kind of questions.
Yeah, Jeff, you just really hit on something really big there too, right? You mentioned finding somebody who's going to have empathy and setting the stage for that accountability. I should ask you, if you came to me and legitimately said, Eric, I want you to hold me accountable, I should ask you, Jeff, well, let's talk about what that looks like.
Yeah.
Do you want me to remind you? Do you want me to just send a random once a week text that asked if you did it? Because then I'm operating under your definition and your flow, right? So it doesn't become, again, Eric decides what's best for Jeff. Jeff does.
Right. Because you're in it together, I guess is the best way to say it. We sometimes think about somebody that's holding you accountable, that their job is to point out the failures. Their job is also to celebrate successes.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And you know what? That's where the power is. Now, I will tell you, for those of you out there who've maybe not, because this can be self-accountability too, right? You can create a plan on paper. You can set a reminder of reviewing that plan once a week, once every other week, whatever, to keep yourself on track. That's definitely a possibility too. A good one for that matter. And then it also is finding someone whom you trust, someone who has empathy, someone that's also not going to buy your BS. Because quite frankly, Jeff, we know if we're all going to be transparent, we all are good at BSing ourselves. I mean, typically. So finding someone that's not going to buy that and can do it in a way, again, that's gentle and caring and calling you on your BS is important. Here are some things that kind of to give some tips, and we'll put some of this information in the show notes. The first one, I would go back into the archives of our podcast and take a look at some of our earliest episodes, because we did talk about competencies. And those competencies, I think, can really serve you well around this understanding how emotional intelligence can be leveraged to help you as you're in this facet. Now, obviously, today, Jeff, we talked about exercise and nutrition. There's multitude of areas of life that we can leverage our emotional intelligence to make those better decisions. So if you're in that position, or if you have a team of people and you're wanting to apply the same kind of template or model, get in touch with us. We'd love to talk to you about how we could help you and your organization. The other tip that I would throw out to you is, I want to just as a reminder, start small. Just start small and build. It's the most efficient. And again, I believe that it puts you in a position where you increase the chances that you're going to be successful in what you're trying to tackle as it relates to this. It's very important. again, by way of re-emphasizing the importance of self-empathy. I do believe we're way too hard on ourselves in this area that we've been talking about today. It is about you doing what you can do with what you have where you're at. And again, if you want to know who should feel bad and who should be ashamed or whatever, again, it's those people that won't even try, that won't even attempt the work. Having said that, these are some things that you can try. We'll put some additional resources in the show notes that might help you, links to some books that are subject matter around nutrition and exercise. And then obviously you can always reach out to us directly at info@spiritofeq.com if you'd like to learn more. Folks,
you don't know how much benefit we will get if you leave us some comments. Because one, comments help us decide where we're going to go for the next episode. You may ask a question or make a comment that we go, oh, we haven't even thought of that. We want to move ahead. So please give us the comments. We want to hear.
Well, and I would also tell the audience as well that in addition to the comments, a great review on your podcast platform, wherever you get your podcast, is deeply, deeply appreciated. One of the biggest reasons why that is, it helps when people are searching, and you never know, there could be someone out there that you've never met and they saw your review on our podcast, and it's really going to lead to a breakthrough for them. So we deeply would appreciate that as well. So on that note, Jeff, I will say so long, and thanks everybody for tuning in, and we look forward to the next time that we're with you. Take care.
Take care.